Okay, got sound. I think I'm fucking live here. Okay, great. Got my blue light glasses. This thing's not giving me feedback. It's going a lot better than yesterday. Okay, so here I am. This video. Oh, come on. All right. So today I am. Let me calm down here. So today, this is April the 1st, 2026. Happens to be Passover. Odd timing. Today, the Artemis 2 mission is launching. So Artemis is it's a NASA space mission. They basically people want to go to space Israel, aka Mars. So they're trying to forge a path to be able to do that for the globalists to find a little promised land. So what this video is about is to just put it in 30 seconds so you can get on with your day if you don't want to watch this. I think this Artemis 2 mission, this is the second one. This is the first manned mission. I think this program's going to be a disaster. This very mission, this flight that's taking off today at 6:24 p.m. in Florida on the East Coast of America, this mission could be a total disaster. If not this one, it's going to be this program. So I'm going to get into the mythology about this and just basically what I think is in the globalist circles is driving this whole thing. But basically, the reason it's going to be a disaster is humans are not supposed to invoke Artemis, the goddess Artemis, and I'm going to get into who she is. You're not supposed to invoke her. You're not supposed to build temples to her. And building a rocket and naming the mission program after her is building a temple to her. So this will really piss off this being. So, it's not good. In the old days, when very knowledgeable Freemasons ran NASA, they picked good names like Apollo. Apollo is a very, oh, I'm getting cat bombed. My cat just came in. Apollo is a very friendly, approachable god. He's a god of travelers. He keeps travelers safe. He keeps people safe from plagues. So when Freemasons were running NASA, they picked great names for the mission programs, and things went overwhelmingly well. Not the case this time. So that's the gist of it. If you want to stick around and hear sort of my analysis, and I'm going to put up some slides here and share some imagery and some video, then here we go. So let's get into who Artemis is before we start diving into NASA and the mission and the globalists and what the fuck Elon Musk and what they're up to. So Artemis, let's share some screen here. Let's share some images. Actually, before I do that, I've got to open the damn. Yeah, my computer's really pissing me off lately. I'll create something and I'll save it in a folder and it's just not fucking there and it's driving me insane. My apologies. It's like when you think you're prepared and then you're not. It's a pain in the ass. I don't want to say it's embarrassing, but yeah, it's a little embarrassing. I hope, yeah, I hope my little slide presentation just didn't fall down my hard drive's memory hole. Ah, here we go. All right, got that bastard open. Now let's share the screen as I intended. Okay, so this is the logo for Artemis. So you've got the rocket, you've got the trajectories, the red and the blue, and you've got this triangle. And then you've got the moon. So this Artemis mission, this is a moon mission. So what they're gonna do, this is the first moon mission since like 1972. Yeah, I think it's 1972. It was what, like Apollo 14 or something. Um, so it's a moon mission. What they're gonna do with this Artemis 2, you've got a crew of three, just like with the Apollos. Because Mercury was one crew member, Gemini was two, Apollo was three. So we're back to rockets, like in the 60s and 70s. Crew of three, what they're going to do is just like Apollo 8 and 9 did it, and Apollo 10. They flew around the backside of the moon, and they're basically, scoping landing sites, getting data, for trajectories, on how to land the damn thing when they eventually do that. So yeah, so they're going to follow similar sort of a flight path as Apollo's 8, 9, 10, going around the dark side of the moon. And the moon doesn't revolve. The moon doesn't rotate. The same side of the moon always faces us. So we've got this dark side of the moon. Kind of a mysterious thing. So yeah, so you've got the moon and the symbolism there, and then you've got this triangle. The triangle is extremely important. It's in every spiritual tradition on the planet. You have the wisdom of three, and the triangle is often used. And then in Chinese Taoism, the circle replaces the triangle, but it's all about this symbolism of three, which I'll have to get into in another video. But triangles, circles, very high spiritual symbols because they symbolize this power of the three energetic forces. So okay, so that's the symbol for Artemis. This is a bit of a whoops. This is like a breakdown. This is a different Artemis logo made by NASA, but so it points out the moon, get the letter A for Artemis. It's an arrowhead too, because as we'll see later, Artemis is depicted artistically as an archer. She's a huntress. She's a goddess of nature and of the hunt and some other things. So you got the moon, the arrow. You got their trajectory. Visualize a spacecraft's journey in red to symbolize the path to Mars. So this is all about building up to a manned Mars mission, and the globalists have this pipe dream for colonizing Mars because they're basically a bunch of Zionists and they've got Israel on the brain. This bullshit going on with Iran and Israel right now, it's not about Judaism, it's about Zionism. Judaism was created by a cult that comes out of Iran called the cult of the Magi. It's like the Magi in the nativity story, the story of Jesus' birth. The Magi were basically like very twisted Zoroastrian priests. So, and there's a whole history there, but basically Indo-Europeans, same group as our Indo-European ancestors. Some of them moved into Iran and India, and the ones in Iran, they went insane from living in the desert because the desert makes people fucking insane because it's so desolate. And they created monotheism. So they created this toxic concept of, there's only one God, and every other spiritual being who is not that one God is or his little junior is evil. So yeah, they basically they want their space Israel. They want their little promised land to go live in that they can micromanage. And then it's got the crescent. So, they say it symbolizes the earth and the rising earth if you're on the moon. And then Artemis's bow. The crescent moon was also a symbol of the horns that gods and goddesses were depicted as wearing. It's a symbol of power of a god or a goddess. So that's basically the breakdown with this symbol here. Here's an artistic depiction of Artemis herself. So her other name is Diana, Artemis Diana. Diana's the Roman name, and she was part of the triple goddess. So it was Artemis, Selene. So Selene was the actual moon and, sort of the power force. one of the power forces behind the moon. And then you had Hecate, which was in the underworld. So Selene is in the heavens, Hecate in the underworld, and then Artemis on the earth. So Artemis Diana is a goddess of the hunt, goddess of nature. She's also a protector of the working class, of just, the regular people who have to get up and work for a living. Those of us who there's really nothing rich and famous and fabulous about us. She's a protector of the working class, but she is not to be prayed directly to. She's not to be invoked, and temples are not to be built to her. Her temples are forests, meadows, groves, places in nature, grottos, things like that. You leave her alone and you trust that she's on your side, and that nature will be there for you. So because they've named this mission after her and they've built a temple to her, which is the rocket, which is the Orion rocket, which I'm also going to get into Orion. Because they've built a temple to her and invoked her by using her name, they've profaned this goddess. So they've basically profaned this powerful force behind the natural world. So she doesn't like this. And when gods and goddesses are profaned, they balance the accounts. They don't so much punish people, but they hold people to account for breaking the rules. And so just naming this mission after her is just very dangerous for the humans, for the astronauts that are manning these missions. So yeah, I don't think the whole thing's gonna go very well, to be honest. So yeah, here's another, get rid of that. It's another depiction of her. Whoops, jumped ahead a little bit. So yeah, there's Artemis, looking kind of sleek and sexy. She's got her bow. There's a deer, she's a hunter. She's a huntress. So yeah. Now her consort, her lover or whatever, in mythology is Orion, who was also a hunter. Orion is a symbol, well, among many things, Orion is a symbol of the working class. And so in the mythology, Artemis, Diana, and Orion, they enjoyed hunting in the wilderness together and they were very happy together. And this is symbolic of, the close connection, the really the inextricable connection between the working class, the common people in the natural world, because historically 90% of the population or more has been involved with agriculture. So they're very close to the land, and as not just as the descendants of Europeans, but also the descendants of Africans, of East Asians, we are very, our spirituality was very close to the land. Our gods lived in the skies, in the earth, in the forests, the winds, the rivers, the oceans, the plains. That's where our gods lived. So being close to nature, we were close to our gods, and it was very balanced. It was very harmonious. Humans have always been humans, but it was very balanced and harmonious. Whereas the monotheist mind virus, Judaism, and then its export versions, so Christianity and Islam, are very unbalanced. They see humanity as having the right to dominate and exploit the natural world. So yes, this pisses off Artemis, Gaia, the Earth goddess, and Orion. So let's get back to Orion. So her Diana, Artemis, Diana, and Orion were very happy together. And the way the mythology goes is that Gaia, the Earth goddess, became fearful that they, and especially Orion, would hunt every animal. So, would hunt all of her animals. So she created a scorpion to sting him and kill him. Now, this is very important. She created a scorpion to sting him and kill him. So this is a stock image from, I think, Alamy, that they sell graphics online. And this was a graphic used to promote the Jabberwockies. So the Jibby Jabbers. So yeah. Um Pretty interesting. So this was the scorpion Gaia created to destroy Orion. So again, this is the scorpion. Orion is, the working class. And then Gaia in 2020 would have been the billionaire eco-terrorists that had the cooties made at the laboratory. And and they use their eco-terrorism as a motivation to find ways to try to decimate world population. They've been talking about it for, 40 years. So when you create a scorpion like this, scorpion, a jabberwocky, a jibber jabber, when you create a scorpion like this to kill Orion, the working class of humanity, which is the majority of us, you make Artemis Diana very angry because she loves us and she's there to protect us. Now, another interesting thing about this graphic is that space rockets, in this 1960s, 70s style, which we've gone back to, they look like syringes. So, with all this space exploration, you can make the case that we were we were launching syringes into space. But I doubt we ever had, well, not so much we, but the the powers that be. I doubt they ever got permission to do that. Because again, when you go back into pre-Judeo-Islamo-Christianity, people knew that outer space was the realm of the gods and the realm of the ancestors. So when I say ancestors, not so much, your grandparents, your great grandparents, your biological forebears, but our spiritual ancestors, the spiritual beings that help to create this reality and then sustain this reality and eventually to dissolve it as they're dissolving it right now. And we're seeing reality come unglued. So outer space was seen as the realm of gods and spirits, and the same thing with the planets. So, and a fascinating thing, I learned this from Thomas Sheridan that, and this video is very much inspired by him on the off chance if anyone he knows ever hears this. Thing I've learned from him, and I looked into this, is that in the Soviet Union, they had a state religion, which was called Cosmism. So we usually think in the West, we usually think that the Soviet Union was an atheist sort of society. And certainly there was a good deal of that, especially in the Bolshevik elite, because the Bolshevik elite were trained by the Western elite, the bankers from New York and London, who are a bunch of atheist corporate Bolsheviks themselves. But they knew Russia and then the other countries, the other nations within the Russian Empire, they knew they were highly spiritual cultures, so they had to give them something because you just couldn't take it all. So they came up with cosmism. The idea of cosmism is that the space, the moon, the planets, that's where the gods and all the spirits exist. And the idea using physics, and it's an idea that's corroborated by modern physics, is that gravity is the force that enforces the rules of 3D reality. So, and physicists say this, when you get beyond gravity, beyond the force of gravity, anything is possible. You're in a higher dimensional space. You're up in a fifth dimensional or higher type of a space. And that's very important. This was an early COVID Jabberwocky graphic. Um, so when you're in that higher dimensional space, anything's possible. It's like a spiritual vision plus like you're tripping on some kind of a psychedelic. It's very powerful. And when you actually listen to the Apollo astronauts, and even the Gemini and the Mercury astronauts, something very profound happened up there. And probably the astronaut who was most articulate was Edgar Mitchell. He sort of dropped out of the public light, and he went to an ashram and he learned how to meditate, and he created an organization called the Noe I think it was the Noetic Research Society, or the Society for Noetic Research, or Foundation for Noetic Research. But yeah, Noetic Research being the operative phrase. He created this organization, and it was make to study both science and spirituality together, to fuse them. Because in multiple interviews, when asked, what he experienced going to the moon on an Apollo mission, he said, to properly articulate what we experienced up there, one would have to be a poet, an artist, a scientist, a philosopher, and a mystic. So for an astronaut to say that, some guy who, went to the Naval Academy or Air Force Academy and became a military pilot, was probably a hard drinker in his day, you know, combat pilot, for that guy to say that, he experienced something much more profound than picking up space rocks and, hopping around in a spacesuit on the moon and seeing the stars more vividly and watching the Earth rise. There's more to it than that. Neil Armstrong, who made the first moonwalk, he became a recluse. Buzz Aldrin, who was the commander of Apollo 11, had a complete mental breakdown. And he dropped a lot of hints about seeing living things on the moon. So, basically, the moon is like this haunted realm. Um, just according to the pre-Judeo-Islamo-Christian spiritual sciences, the moon is inhabited by spirits. There's an audio I can't find, but it was from one of the Apollo missions, and and the astronaut over the radio was saying they're parked on the edge of the crater and they're watching us. A lot of bizarre experiences astronauts have related. John Glenn during the Mercury missions had an experience with what he called the fireflies. They were basically what looked like fireflies, these little shimmering lights flying around outside of his windows. Which was very promptly played off like it was, ice crystals or particles of oxygen or something. But it's just so much unexplained. Um, and even astronauts in, what was it, Apollo 8 and Apollo 10, the ones that flew around the backside of the moon, they said that they saw campfires and bonfires on the backside of the moon. It's possible that it was a like a booster rocket that had been jettisoned and had crashed into the moon, but it's even in the transcripts. They said that they saw multiple fires burning. So who the fuck knows what it was they were seeing? But so yeah, there's a lot here. So, to sort of circle back to Artemis, This goddess has been profaned. She's been invoked and she's had a temple built to her. And the temple, which is the rocket, is named after her lover who was murdered in the mythology by Gaia, the earth goddess, creating a scorpion. So, yeah, I think, this is one of these myths where I think the powers that be may have massaged it to just to remind us, yeah, well, we might come back and wipe you all out one day, or try to anyway. So, yeah. So the syringe is the scorpion, the working class, the majority of humanity, the vast majority of humanity is Orion, and Artemis is the lover and protector of Orion, the humanity, the working class. So, and then Gaia in the myth is the billionaire in the Ivy League, the trust fund eco-terrorists who've been saying that the majority of humanity are useless eaters for, the last 40 years. They've been saying it publicly. They've been saying it longer than that. People like H.G. Wells were saying it over 100 years ago, and George Bernard Shaw, who said that people should have to go before a government panel every year to prove their right to exist. See if I can find that. George Bernard Shaw. And he wrote about this a lot too, but he was actually captured on film. Oh yeah, let's share my browser. So yeah, this was the playwright, the author and playwright who wrote My Fair Lady, and it was a play about to see if he and his Ivy League rich buddies could turn a working class girl into they could basically brainwash her to become upper class and act and speak the way they wanted her to. People are like, "Oh, My Fair Lady's so cute." No, it's actually really fucking condescending. But this is in my family too. It's like so much of the working class loves to be condescended to and shit on by people who, ooh, they give scholarships and oh, they have such incredible academic credentials. So anyway, here he is. It's only 30 seconds. Yeah. So yeah, and anybody who doesn't like the sound of that will just tell you that Russian intelligence cooked that up. But you know, I don't know. That's just sort of what miserable people do, who they can't cope with what's right in front of them, is they have to tell you that Russian intelligence cooked it up if they can't cope with what they're seeing and hearing. So yeah. So and then, when you get into the whole Wuhan cooties and the Jabberwockies, you're looking at medical experimentation on the world population, but you're also looking at this sort of phenomena of voluntary sacrifice. So it's like they were trying to get people, well, I mean, they're still offering the Jabberwocky. So they're trying to get people these past 5 years to participate in a willing sacrifice. But it's like people don't, people who are fucking dense don't understand this. So yeah, it's like they want them to be willing sacrifices because you kill people against their, oh, I guess you can't say the K word, when you unalive people against their will, it doesn't have the sacrificial power that a willing sacrifice has. Because when it's willing, you're harvesting the emotion. Humans are very powerful spiritual beings, but Judeo-Islamo-Christianity, the Middle East mind virus from the desert, they're very good at training us to believe that we're worthless, we're weak, and that only God has spiritual power because he's just so fucking wonderful and he gives poor kids scholarships. And his son works charity. So when you say to you get these people who they're high on their academic credentials and their intellectualism, but then out of the other side of their mouth, they'll tell you they're spiritual people. But then when you start talking about the spiritual powers that humans have, they start laughing at you. So they're fucking materialists who are not terribly intelligent and who call themselves spiritual. Because, the Western world, particularly America, since the end of World War II, you don't have to have character. You don't have to actually do anything. All you have to do is fucking talk about how great you are. And all the fakes around you will cover for you if you have this disposition. So that's where they're operating from. So what they wanted to do is they wanted people to be willing sacrifices, but it wasn't explained outright. It was explained publicly, but in a very roundabout manner. So what the powers that be were doing, they were they were basically operating through what would be called philosophical Satanism. So Satanism, when you're looking at the Church of Satan, they don't like sacrifice people and they don't wear devil horns and dress up as the devil and do all that bullshit. Satanism, philosophical Satanism is basically about you you don't coddle people and you take what you want from life, but in you declare your intentions. Now, to do this, you don't have to spell out your intentions. You don't have to be you don't have to be direct and spell things out, but you do have to declare your intentions. Now, the practical purpose of this is that if your intentions have been declared and then you do things to people that you say you're going to do to them, the idea is that you don't get a karmic backlash and you can just keep doing what you're doing. Now, this makes a lot of sense because, you look at like Rockefeller types, so many of them, they've bankrolled all the major wars in the last 100 plus years. They've helped instigate them, and they haven't lost their money. So many of them have lived to be, 100 years old. They look like they're living pretty good lives, but they always declared what they were going to do to us. And since monotheism, since the Judeo-Islamo Christianity doesn't teach people to think in symbolic, artistic, nuanced ways, it makes people's minds very literal and obvious and black and white. So they can't read between the lines when they're being told in an indirect way what their lords and masters are preparing to do to them. So that's how they can keep doing it. So yeah, if there's my hope in making a video like this is to encourage somebody to think in a more holistic, artistic, symbolic way rather than just biblical, black and white, A to B, literal and obvious kind of a way. So, so back to the Jabberwockies and the Wuhan cooties, the manufactured bug and its remedy, which was cooked up along with it many years ago. and using it to make people willing sacrifices, to get people to volunteer to be willing sacrifices. What's the value in all that? Harvesting all that energy, what are they going to do with it? Well, possibly they want to use it for the success of this whole Mars mission, this whole project of going to Mars and colonizing it. So that could be the purpose here. Harvesting the energy of people's blind faith and their willingness to sacrifice themselves. Because we are energetic beings. Our bodies are electromagnetic. Our minds are even more powerfully electromagnetic. And then the soul is a god in flesh for everybody. It's like everybody's a millionaire. If everyone's a millionaire, you got a great deal, but nobody's special. So it's the same thing with the soul. Souls are gods that live in a physical body. So they emit a lot of energy. They can direct amazing amounts of energy towards whatever they set their intention to. So I think that was the real value of the whole the whole Wuhan cooties scamdemic. It was to harvest mental and physical energy from human beings. So, and to put it towards whatever cause, and one of these causes could be this. So it's basically what amounts to a Holocaust. So it's like what we call the Holocaust during World War II was only a dress rehearsal for the events of 2020 and 2021. And it's interesting so I went to the King James Bible Dictionary, I looked up the word Holocaust. They used the Webster's Dictionary. They referenced the Webster's Dictionary to give me a definition. So the definition, the noun, comes from Greek. I don't want to get into the etymology. So a holocaust is a burnt sacrifice or offering, the whole of which was consumed by fire, a species of sacrifice in use among the Jews and some pagan nations. So by and large, the pagan nations in the Middle East, and before the Babylonian captivity, the Jews were full-blown pagans. Um, and actually, their leaders holocausted them when they came back from the Babylonian captivity to, Israel, Lebanon, Syria, Palestine area. So basically, a Holocaust, when you want something from Jehovah, the God of the Bible, you have to burn him an offering of flesh. And then he gives you what you want. It's transactional. You pay him. So you pay him not only the burned flesh, but you pay him all the fear and the terror and, the mindlessness of the selfless martyrs who do the killing. Because there's nothing more toxic than a selfless martyr. And the Nazis, the Bolsheviks, communists, crusaders, jihadists, they're selfless martyrs. They have no self. They don't have the balls to want something out of life. So they're like, oh, I'm just going to serve the common good. Well, this whole phrase common good, it's a euphemism for doing the dirty work of the establishment. Like organizations like Central Intelligence, they use that as a euphemism. Oh, this is a common good mission, which is what they call the heroin running out of fucking Afghanistan. So yeah, interesting too that the Jewish community would choose this word Holocaust to call, what happened, to refer to what happened in the Third Reich. They didn't call it the genocide, the disaster, the catastrophe. They called it the transactional sacrifice to Jehovah. So go noodle on that for a while. All right, let's stop that share. So yeah, this Artemis thing is pretty fucking big. Oh, whoops. Gotta bring up. Yeah, I want to play some audio for you. It was the audio from Backside of the Moon, Dark Side of the Moon. Yeah, artists, musicians, writers being, all types of artists being as intuitive as they are, they're channels. They channel ideas from the realm of thought. And so, with Pink Floyd with the Dark Side of the Moon album, it was written during the Apollo program. It's like I think they picked up on something that there's something fucking weird on the dark side of the moon. So I got to cue this up. So basically, to give you the context, when Apollo 10, when that crew flew around the dark side of the moon, the capsule they were in started ringing. It was a shrill, kind of a whining noise, and the astronauts said, "Oh, I think that's space music." What it sounds like to me is it sounds like some sort of an alarm or a warning. And the moon itself, because planets are intelligent, they're basically intelligent, practically immortal beings. They live for billions of years. So it makes me wonder, yeah, was this a warning from the moon itself? Like, stay the fuck away from here. You haven't asked permission. You're in the realm of the gods. Because that's an interesting thing with being an astronaut. Astronauts actually ascend to the realm of the gods, and then they come back to Earth. So it's what Jesus supposedly did. So actually, if I had the choice, if I had only two choices, if it was worship Jesus or worship a NASA astronaut, I'd probably worship the astronaut because they actually went to the realm of the gods and came back. Whereas I got to take some church's word for Jesus, from some book, the Bible, which is it's written in the style of a Shakespearean play because Francis Bacon, he wrote all the Shakespeare stuff and he wrote the King James Bible, I'm convinced. So anyway, here's the sound from the dark side of the moon from Apollo 11 Apollo 10 back in, what was that, 1969. Yeah. So pretty weird. He said, one of the astronauts said, wow, that's some weird space music. And then the other one says, yeah, no one will believe us. And someone in Houston's like, oh, that's just your VHF, very high frequency radio. There's always just some shitty explanation. So yeah. So I think that was like an alarm. It was like a warning. It was reverberating their capsule when they went around the dark side of the moon. And it's telling them, get the fuck out of here. If you keep coming here, it's going to be a problem. And you had Apollo 13 where those guys almost died. So it really makes you wonder. But yeah, with these, where is it? These space needles, these space rockets looking like needles. Syringes, it makes you wonder. So we fired syringes into space without permission, or, the powers that be fired them. Well, in 2020, whatever lives in space, the gods, the ancestors, the spirits, I think they fired syringes back. And they were like, okay, this whole thing on Earth is going fucking crazy with these people manipulating Earth. It's becoming a danger. Their exceed excuse me, their reach exceeds their grasp. They don't have the emotional maturity to handle the technology that they've built. So we're gonna have to do something about this. So I think they held tryouts for humanity, and this whole scamdemic and these untested Jabberwockies were presented to us, and people who were invested in the establishment instead of themselves, they got multiple fucking Jabberwockies. Um, it's when you get the multiples, I think, where they're really dangerous. And even getting one, I don't think is really the dangerous thing. It's the people who got off on trying to make the rest of us get them. Those were really the people who were the willing sacrifices. So yeah, we fired syringes into outer space and we had syringes fired back. So yeah, there was all this sacrifice energy gathered, but it's a janky deal because people really didn't have it explained to them. So the whole point of this video is I don't think this is going to go well at all, this whole Artemis mission. Um, Next, what is it? Not this well, let me see. April 8th through like the 13th, it's a really fucking crazy astrological time. And dangerous things can happen. You know, and then the whole Iran thing is tied to this because it's all under the auspices of the Zionists who want to go have their space Israel on Mars. And capturing Iran is all about this whole greater Israel thing, where it's like the Zionists think they're entitled to control that, to control Iraq, Syria, Israel, Egypt. So yeah, it's some really heavy Zionist shit going on right now, and I think it's going to backfire on them. I think by 2031 we're going to see the collapse of corporate communism worldwide. So we got a few years to wait this out. Another interesting thing too is so this launch is going to go off in Florida at 6:24 Eastern Daylight Time, and this will be the Seder meal, the Jewish Passover meals will be in progress in Israel and Europe, and this will be sort of like pre-Seder entertainment for those in America because this is about an hour before sunset on the East Coast of America. So, and they started the countdown to this mission on March 29th at 4:44 p.m. So they're using the number four, the number of stability, a trinity of fours to try to make this successful, this whole project successful. Now, the problem with that is four being a number of stability and perseverance, it's also the number of Rahu or Loki or the north node of the moon or the dragon's head. The number four is basically an admonishment. It's kind of like a warning to Rahu or Loki. Because Rahu Loki is a kickstarter. He kickstarts things and he moves on. He doesn't have perseverance. He is the flash of the lightning. He's the spark where the lightning starts a fire. He doesn't have perseverance. So the numbers all is saying, well, you're gonna have to work for what you want. Now, the fortunate thing is that since baby boomers, Gen Xers, and millennials have taken over the world, we are not generations by and large with discipline, patience, and perseverance. We are instant gratification generations who fucking bitch and whine when we don't get what we want right away. And that's why sort of reality's falling apart right now, is because since the old timers are gone, the people running the world are just completely fucking mentally disorganized. They're addicted to all kinds of shit. So, and it's a good thing because globalism's fucking falling apart. So, yeah. And the other thing too is they started this countdown on March 29th at 4:44 p.m. Well, it's daylight time, so it was really 3:44 p.m. because daylight savings time, we set the clock an hour ahead. So they half-assed it. So basically, you don't have knowledgeable occultists, you don't have knowledgeable Freemasons running NASA. So they pick shitty names, inappropriate names like Artemis, which I think will not lend itself to success. And they fuck up little details like this. Another interesting thing too is K2, the south node of the moon. It's a planet, a being of pure spirituality. It's in the same place it was in April 1970 when Apollo 13 had a near disaster. So we're back into a very similar energetic time as the Apollo 13 disaster. So this is going to be very interesting. All right, I'm going to wrap it up there. I got some shit to do. I'm glad I got this off my chest, and I hope you guys get something out of this. So have a nice one.